You should notice two things about this position. What are they? Well, hopefully you said number one, white seems to be missing a rook. White only has one rook and black has two rooks. And then the other thing, and the more important thing, is that black's king seems to be sitting in the center of the board on d5. That's not normally where kings are supposed to be. This is one of the most incredible games of chess that I have ever seen. It was played by Wei Yi, and that name might sound familiar to you because he just won the 2024 Tata Steel Tournament. But what's interesting today is that the game that I'm about to show you was not played in 2024. This game was played almost 10 years ago, back in 2015. I was actually preparing to show this game on the channel before I knew that he won the Tata Steel Tournament, which is pretty ironic when you think about it. But this is one of the most incredible king walk games of chess that you will ever see. And I just saw it recently. I'm going to show it to you now. And yeah, let's just take a look. So here we go. We have a Sicilian, and he develops his knights. The Sicilian is one of those weird openings where you can actually get away with just playing a bunch of pawn moves initially because you don't really create too many big weaknesses, and those pawn moves are actually controlling some important squares. That's kind of what's going on here. Wei is just developing his pieces. Finally, black starts to develop as well. We're going to go through this. Everybody's developing, and now he plays f4. This is pretty common in the Sicilian. You try to play aggressive. You can put both of these pawns here, and you think about pushing them forward at the right moment later in the game. All right? So black plays d6. Again, pretty standard stuff. King to h1. Now, I want to talk about this move because I know a lot of intermediate players see this move and they're like, why do grandmasters always seem to do this? They always play these king moves. What's going on? So here's the situation. Notice the pawn on f4 has been moved forward, which means if the king is on g1, there is the possibility that at some point in the future, black could put the king in check. Now, but right now, it's not an issue. You have pieces blockading that. And you could always move later. But what happens is sometimes there's tactics that open up for black where it's like you're trying to do something as white. You're like, hey, I want to push here. I want to attack this. And I want to threaten this. But it doesn't work because the queen would go here and check me and maybe take a random piece somewhere on the board, right? Something like this. That's super annoying. So what grandmasters do is they say, look, I know that as the game goes on, I'm going to want to move these pieces. And I know that there might be some tactics that pop up. So I'm going to fix that right now and put my king in the corner. And I don't have to worry about that in the future. And it makes the calculation easier. It gives less options to black, right, when you're attacking. And so that's the deal. Okay, it's just really planning ahead for what's going to happen and solving the problem ahead of time. All right, castles, queen to e1. Why does he play this move? A lot of times, if you want to attack on the king side, you have to get the queen over there somehow. Well, the queen can't go there because the bishop's in the way, and you can't really come up and over like this. And so queen to e1 is the easiest way. It gives you two options to bring it over to the king side where you can start attacking. Very simple move, but that's the idea. So he takes b5. Queen comes over. He's lining up here. If black were to fall asleep for a moment, you would get checkmated right away. Okay. Of course, black's not going to do that. This is a grandmaster here. Bishop to b7. Plays a3. He's just kind of trying to stop this. And I guess we should actually talk about what happens if black plays this, although you guys could probably figure that out. If he moves the knight somewhere and the pawn gets captured, what's going to happen? Well, we already talked about it, right? There's a checkmate here. So that's one thing. You didn't really have to worry about that pawn. There's also the idea of just leaving the knight there and shoving this pawn forward right away and just attacking that way and going for some sort of trade like this, which is great for white. So he had a lot of options, and black really needed some more pieces involved first. And then he decided, you know what, let me go ahead and stop that temporarily. All right. Brings the other rook over. Bishop here. Queen to h3. Now, what is he doing now? Well, he's shifting focus from here to here, and he's threatening almost checkmate, right? If he plays e5, it unleashes the bishop. At the same time, it attacks the knight, and if the knight moves away, we have a checkmate here, okay? So black says, you know what? I don't want any part of that. Let me go ahead and stop that with g6. But by playing g6, he allows this idea of f5. Now, this is an important idea. Whenever you're trying to attack, one of the most important things is opening up files for your rooks, because right now the pawns are in the way. The rooks can't do anything. You can't go through your own pawns. So you want to find opportunities to trade off those pawns and unleash the big pieces, right? That's what he's doing. He's playing f5 and he's saying, look, I don't care which pawn you move. At some point, I'm going to capture here and I'm going to open up my rook. Okay? So black plays e5, retreats the bishop, and then here we go. We can see the rook is coming into the party. All right? Knight to d5. Now, it looks like this is just losing a pawn, right? Takes, takes, takes. What's he doing? Well, he wants to sacrifice the rook on f7. And here we go. Now you're going to see why he's down a rook and why the king ends up on d5. Or if you don't see it yet, you will very, very soon. Of course, black has to take. There's a checkmate threat here. You could try to defend with knight f6, but then you allow queen e6. He's coming after the king. If you try to run, the bishop's coming in. And take my word for it, you can see the eval bar there. Black's position is a mess. Okay, you do not want to play that position. So he says, all right, let's take the rook. And queen to h7 check. Now, what's the point? Well, he just sacrificed the rook. He has to somehow attack the king. If you just go with, like, the other rook, well, then the king just goes back. And it's kind of like, okay, thanks for the rook. Now I'm just back where we started. That doesn't really help white. So he needed to force the king to come out. And by the way, if you go here, this is simply checkmate. Okay? So the king is forced to e6. And now he captures the knight. Now, you might be wondering, why doesn't he take here first? Well, if you take there, you give black the option to block with the knight. And remember, knights are one of the best defenders against a queen when you're in check. And if we try to keep checking, look at that. The knight is there. The knight is there. It stops everything we're trying to do, essentially. So you can't allow that. That's why he goes ahead and captures. And then black decides to take with the king. Now, he could have taken with the bishop, but he was just going to lose the game after bishop takes g6. There's all sorts of checkmate threats, and black, I guess, didn't want to play that. The engine says you could survive if you sacrifice here and play d5 and try to run this way, I guess is the idea. But anyway, that's not what happened. Took with the king. And I think his plan is pretty straightforward. He's going to come here, and he's going to hide over on the queen side. So with that in mind, what do you think Wei played here? You had a chance to look at that. The move is bishop to e4 check. And it's what I just said. You can't allow the king to just run over here and hide. So how do you stop the king from going here? Well, you sacrifice another piece. Bishop to e4 check. King takes, only real move. Anything else gets you checkmated. For example, if you try to go back here, queen takes g6, bishop f6, queen f5. This is eventually going to lead to a checkmate, I believe. There's some craziness that could happen. I guess the rook can block if you want to try to survive. It's still really bad for black, even though it's not checkmate immediately. Everything is pinned. And yeah, that's kind of the idea. So because of that, the king said, okay, takes the bishop. And now white only has two good moves. What do you think he played here? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move that was played in the game is queen to f7. And the point is, you don't want to allow the king to retreat. You also need to use the queen to deliver the checkmate. So he's kind of doing both at the same time, stopping that, threatening some checkmates. The move that is actually best, according to the engine, is c4, which is kind of ridiculous because what it wants you to do is after the capture, you take, you go check, and then this is checkmate. And the only reason that's available is because you force that pawn to capture, which is wild, right? Like if you go back here and you try to do this initially, you can't go there. You can't go there. The pawn just takes you. So that was the point behind Stockfish saying, hey, look, we're going to play c4 as a way to stop the king from running. And if black takes, oh, yeah, by the way, we have this crazy checkmate with our queen. It's just wild. This position is so wild. So queen to f7 was what was played in the game. And what's interesting about this position is that black only has one move to not get checkmated immediately on the next turn. So for example, anything that black plays, let's say you try to push a pawn, that's checkmate. Oh, okay, there's a checkmate with the queen. I'll stop that with rook to f8. No, you won't. This is also checkmate. Unleash the rook. Bishop's here, queen's here. Look, this is just a wild position. So there's checkmates by moving the bishop. There's checkmates by moving the queen here. And black has no way to stop both of them unless you go bishop to f6. Only move. Because it blocks off the queen and gives the king an escape route. Now, if you move the bishop, there's an escape route. Okay? So what does Wei play here? He plays bishop to d2 check anyway. And he's trying to see what is black going to do. Black has two options. You could go to d4 or you can go to f5. And Wei wants him to go to f5. Because if he goes to f5, it's game over. There's mate in 5. If you would like to pause, put on your Grandmaster hat. How do you finish off the game from here? You got a chance to look at that. It's rook to f1 check. The king has to move. And actually, it's only mate in 5 if he like throws in this move to delay it. But if he moves the king right away, it's even faster. Let's say he goes to g4, trying to run. You take here, check. There's a couple other lines. I'm not showing you all of them. I'm just showing you like this one, bishop g5, h3, king h4, followed by bishop to e1 check. There's some other ones. We're not going to get into it, but that's just an example. So that's what he wanted, but black played king to d4. And now the best move is actually just to go back to e3. Look at this, and it keeps the king stuck in the center, and he has to come up with a different plan. So what do you think his new plan was? You got a chance to look at that. The move is queen to b3, and he's coming for a new checkmating idea with queen to d3. Now, if you're wondering, why didn't he take the pawn with check? Because it allows the king to run. And then how are you going to stop the king from just running? But you can't. You have no way to control this again, right? You already sacrificed your bishop there. You don't want to sacrifice the queen. So that's why he plays queen to b3. He's coming around this way with the other checkmate threat. And again, we have a situation where every single move that black could play results in a loss. You bring the rook over, you get checkmated. You, I don't know, you move your bishop, you get checkmate. You can't stop queen to d3 checkmate unless you play one move. Only move. King to f5. The only way black survives, okay? Because now it's not checkmate anymore. So what does he play here? You had a chance to look at that. Rook to f1. It's the only move. Because if you play here now, the king actually escapes. And he's going to get away, right? Even if you go check again, he's gone. Too bad. So sad. All right. So rook f1. Only move. King has to go over. Now what did he play? If you had a chance to look at that, this is one of the difficult moments. I mean, there's a lot of difficult moments, but this one is very difficult. Queen to d3. And you have to do that because you need the queen to get closer to the king and start threatening checkmates. And if you try to just attack it with the pawn, you have no follow-up after it just runs here. You just have no follow-up. The bishop is pinning your pawn. If you try to come over with the queen now, there's something here. Yeah, black just plays this, and he's going to run back here and hide. Right? Like, check. You know, he just runs, and you can't get to him. So, you don't have time to play h3, and the move is queen to d3. Because now, let's see, what was played in the game? Yeah, bishop takes g2 was played in the game, but if you played king h5 trying to run now, there's queen here, check, and the king has to move. Then the rook can come up. Yeah, this is the easiest. Threatening to come over here, and after takes, you simply take, and there's no way to stop the checkmate. Queen h3 is happening regardless. King is stuck, bishop's here, and that's your checkmate. So, very, very complicated position, I must say. So instead of that, black decides to sacrifice the bishop, and his idea is that it's a fork, so you're going to lose your rook here if you don't take it. But once you take it, it allows queen a8 check. He's trying to get his queen into the game, which is actually a really good idea. It just doesn't work, and he still gets checkmated. So queen here, check. He moves back, and black plays bishop g5, trying to basically give his king, you know, an escape route by using the bishop to kind of shut off this. So what do you think Wei played here? You had a chance to look at that. The move is queen to e2 check. And like I mentioned earlier, he's trying to come in for the king, and now it's happening. Bishop check. Look at this. The diagonals are cut off, and black's king is forced to go to h3. I just want to point out, the king started here, walked up to d5, had to take the bishop, walked over here for a second, walked back here, walked up here, walked to here, walked to here. It's just wild. It's just wild. And here we go, bishop to e1, another quiet move. He's threatening rook f3. He's threatening queen here if the queen ever moves, and there's really nothing that black can do. I think this is the position black resigned. Just to give you an example, if you try to stop rook f3 by playing, let's just say rook f8, we simply take it, and black is unable to recapture because, like I mentioned, queen g2 is checkmate. And so you would have to just do something else, but then you allow this. Again, you just take it because if the queen ever leaves, this is checkmate. And that's it. That's it. There's one other option here. No, actually, that's it. There's nothing else for black to do. So, absolutely incredible game. He was like 15 years old, 16 years old, like I said. And now he wins the 2024 Tata Steel tournament. So, I mean, wow. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of Wei Yi. Let me know what you guys think. Hopefully this was helpful and you learned a thing or two. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. Play smart. Take care.